Hey, welcome to another episode of the Fit Growth Machine podcast. I'm Brian Royson, your host, and today I'm going to interview Nisarg Shah. He is the co-founder and CEO at Affable.ai. With two offices in the US and Singapore, Affable is building an AI platform to help brands run highly effective influencer marketing campaigns. Using the power of big data and machine learning, Affable helps brands like H&M, Lenovo, and Nespresso, as well as e-commerce brands like BlendJet, Bioworld, and FirstDay, engage with the most authentic and relevant influencers. So stay tuned because this one is going to be really interesting, especially if you are actually looking to start doing some influencer marketing or to start doing it better and in a most effective way. But before talking to him, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. I mean, we get it, customer acquisition costs are going up. There's lack of tracking. Attribution is driving you nuts, right? And audience sizes are getting smaller after the iOS 14 update. If that wasn't enough, there are other factors such as the recession and supply chain issues making it harder than ever to grow your e-commerce brand, right? That's why we need to understand that it's really important to level up the marketing and design a solid strategy, including, influencer marketing as well, as what used to work doesn't anymore. At BSR Digital, we have been helping countless e-commerce brands that wanted to scale their business to the next level through paid ads and email marketing for over a decade. So if you want to check us out and see if we are a good fit to work together, you can visit us at bsrdigital.com and you can email us at hello@bsrdigital.com. Now, as promised, I have my awesome guest here with me. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian. Super excited to be on this podcast. I've been a listener of your other episodes, and I see the kind of value you're adding to your audiences. So it's a great moment for me to be here and share some of the insights in the influencer marketing world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And all the value in this case will be added by you. So I hope the audience enjoy because I know that you have a lot to say and a lot of interesting stuff for people to actually take notes and take action, which is the most important thing, right? But before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to Chloe Thomas. Actually, she made the intro, and that's why I came to know you and Jeff. So Chloe, if you're listening, thank you for this. I really appreciate it. So yeah, let's get things started. And I mean, what's your story? I always love to hear about your background and stories. I always love to know how you started, how you got started in this journey and how you got to work at or to found, in this case, Affable.
Sure. So this kind of goes back to 2017. Me and my co-founder, we were basically thinking about what the future of commerce is going to be. People, according to us, will stop buying off search from Google or Amazon and will start buying while scrolling their feed on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. And TikTok, for example, was not that big. YouTube and Instagram had not gone into shopping as a value proposition. But our hypothesis was that as brands look at the next 5 to 10 years of their commerce abilities, social is going to play a big role. And if they want to scale their social commerce, then they would have to get influencers to spread a lot of the word about them, because there's a massive reach you can get through influencers, which is targeted to a specific niche audience. And long story short, there was no tool in the market that let brands take data-driven decisions around influencers. So a lot of it was manual, time-consuming, full of guesswork. You could not scale like 100-member influencer program over Excel files and Google Sheets. You needed a tool like Google Ads or Google Analytics, where you can see all of the measurements in one place. So that's where we set out to build Affable. It was a massive opportunity that we saw a big white space. And fortunately, now we are working with more than 120 brands across continents with a team of more than 60 people now, building solutions for these brands and agencies who want to work with influencers.
Awesome. That sounds, great. And you're right. We started manually without tools, but now we have tools for everything. And we have data, we
Right.
have information. That's the most important thing about this era. And, why not using that if it's at your disposal? So in this case, influencer marketing, I don't know if it's a buzzword or not, as I was saying before, a hidden record, but it's something that we all know what influencer marketing is, or we believe that we know what influencer marketing is about, right? But many people don't know how to get started on that journey or how to do it right. So how to do it right could be how to find the right influencer, how to make a good deal, or how to make great deals, with well-known influencers for your niche or audience without, leaving, a liver or something else, an organ there in exchange. If you are putting too much money on an effort or on a single effort that doesn't work, probably will cost you a lot and you will struggle. So why should brands listening to this use Affable? What's special there for them?
Sure. So we get this question a lot, right? Like, how do brands get started with influencer marketing? When do they require a solution, right? I think um, any brand, any marketer that wants to work with influencers should first do it themselves. Should basically, reach out to a few influencers that they think are relevant. Maybe look at them up, look at their audience, look at the content, the kind of engagement they get. Make sure that the audience of the influencer aligns with that of the brand, and experiment a bit. Typically, these tools like Affable come into play when you want to scale your program. Once you want to make sure that influencer marketing is working for you and you want to scale it. At the same time, there's a lot of value in using data to drive these decisions, right? So, for example, when a brand wants to work with 10 influencers over Black Friday, choosing the 10 influencers correctly so that you don't end up wasting your money is very important. And influencer marketing works. You mentioned it was a buzzword in the industry. I mean, it was a buzzword for a reason because it worked for some people. They made it a buzz and everyone else started following. Some people did not see results because they just followed the trend without being innovative themselves. We work with brands. One of the e-commerce brands that we work with, they are into fashion merchandise for like superhero movies, etc. They sell clothes based on those themes. And over the last couple of months, they've made around $200,000 in sales for their products purely via influencers, right? So
Yeah, no, I
it,
was
it
going to say
works.
that. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. You continue,
Yeah.
and then I will say something.
Sure. No, so basically, it works. It works very well if you keep at it, if you are thorough with the kind of influencers you work. And once you identify the influencers that are working well for you, identify other similar ones, create a nurturing relationship with these influencers. Don't treat them like billboards who are going to post in exchange for money. Like, cultivate that relationship. And finally, one best practice that we talk about, which we go into more detail, is give them creative freedom to create the content that the influencers think will work, rather than imposing your brand guidelines too much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that we are way past the point of saying if a channel works. Like, does Facebook ad work? Does Google ad work? Does YouTube work, or organic or whatever? Does influencer marketing work? Of course, it's proven, here and there that it works for many individuals, brands. It works. How do you make it work for you? What's the best channel for you and your brand, and how to do it right? It's a separate thing. But if you're wondering, hey, I tried it once and didn't work, influencer marketing doesn't work for me or my brand. Well, of course, you might not. I mean, of course, that's probably wrong, right? It didn't work the way you did it, how you did it with the influencer, you did it in the time of the year, you did it. Uh, what you were promoting or they were promoting with you is a combination of many things. So, to those people, what have you seen in your experience that are the, let's say, the most common mistakes that people make when working with influencers that lead to an unsuccessful relationship?
I think the most common mistakes are typically where brands end up working with influencers based on just like follower counts, who's a big influencer, someone has 50,000 followers, let's work with them, etc. Rather than actually vetting them first, looking through their content, see if it aligns with your brand, the kind of content, the vibe, the colors, everything, right? Like the personality of the influencer. Is it something that represents your brand? I think that's something that a lot of brands overlook. Secondly, the brands don't tend to incentivize the influencers correctly. it's more than just sending a free product to the influencer and expecting them to post about you. And maybe they will, upload a story because they want to be in your good books. But that's not how you run an influencer campaign. For a campaign, you might want to budget something, set out clear instructions for the influencer on what they're supposed to do. Maybe pay them and pay them well, so that the influencers will put in that effort and make sure that they go beyond what you were asking them for and cultivate that relationship. Kind of goes back to the point where it's not just saying, hey, here's $100, post about this, but it's more like, hey, can we chat? Would love to talk about our product, love what you're doing. I would love to send you a free sample, no obligation. If you like it, do post about it. But if you would like to post about it, then happy to pay you a commission. If you drive any sale, we'll give you 10% or 20% of whatever sale you drive. This incentivizes the creators to go out of their way to put that promotion on the YouTube, on the TikTok, on the Instagram, all the channels. And I think many marketers are now realizing that. So due credit to them. But for someone who's getting started, maybe these are some of the tips that would help them.
Okay. So probably a follow-up question would be, I know the answer might be, it depends, but what's probably the right way to do or to think or to plan an influencer campaign? Because many brands we work with at the agency, they say, oh, I'm going to hire, this influencer. I'm going to give this, as you said, this free product, for example, or I will pay them. I will do this one-off, this one thing, and I expect it to do all the work and to be successful. And that's it. If that doesn't work from your experience, what should brands do instead? What's like the minimum engagement that you should have with an influencer to make it worthwhile for the brand?
I think the minimum is having a roster of creators whom you can seed your product to and get content generated from them, right? If you don't have the budget for a full-scale influencer program, or if you don't have the budget to engage, let's say, a macro or a mega celebrity of sorts, get many micro influencers that are creators, the content creators with 5,000, 10,000 followers who will create amazing content for you in exchange for a product. So the absolute minimum you could do, what we call as product seeding, is seed your product to these micro creators without any obligation. I think that's very important, because then what you're saying is, hey, micro influencer, I'm going to send you a product. You keep it. If you like it, if you use it, and if you want to talk about it to your audiences, we would greatly appreciate that. And in the future, we would potentially even pay you to be a part of our follow-up programs. And a lot of brands are doing that, and this definitely works as well.
Okay. So it doesn't require an influencer marketing budget per se, or necessarily you can even give
Right.
away products
That's right.
and get influencer. Because I hear, many people listening or watching this video might say, I don't know, but probably the well-established influencers, I'm not talking about the celebrity kind, but I don't know, 30,000 plus followers, the people who do business often with brands, probably they will charge. So if I don't pay, I will get, the influencers that probably are not that great. Is that true?
That's not true. No. I think, again, it all boils down to how you cultivate your relationship with the content creator. You can basically have people in your own network who may be quite influential, who may not even ask for any payments, right? And again, you can always reach out to these creators very authentically and say, hey, we love the kind of content you create. And again, no obligation. If you were to create any content, you would foresee a long-term partnership, a collaboration with you once we actually see what you can come up with this piece of product that we have. And for the brand, it's beneficial because now you can do a lot of A/B testing. You can test out, you can try out, and then shortlist, let's say, 5 creators whom you want to double down on, whom you want to actually pay a significant amount and get them onto your ambassador kind of program, long-term relationship, sign an annual contract and stuff like that. So just to kind of summarize, it's not important, not necessary for a brand to have like a massive budget, as long as they're willing to kind of give something to the content creator in exchange for that content and the reach that they get from the creators.
Awesome. I know I'm thinking many brands might be in touch with some influencers because they follow them already and they know they are legit. They have a real and not fake, which is pretty important audience, right? They produce high quality content and they know them. They are within reach. But many others aren't. Many brands they know one or two influencers they know they trust, even if they can work with them or not because of what they ask in return. But there are many out there that could be potential opportunities for that brand that they don't know where to find them. And even more, whether to know whether they should trust them because what they can see online is one thing, but whether they have fake followers or a big increase in followers in a short period of time or what they talk about or many other things, it's not that easy to find them, right? So
Right.
at the agency, we love that about Affable, right? So could you please tell the audience briefly what are some of the key features that will provide them with data to actually find them and make more educated decisions on who to work with?
So for educated decisions, the process is throughout an end-to-end program. Let's say, for example, you've shortlisted a few TikTok influencers that you want to work with. How do you know, number one, if they have the right audience that your brand wants to target? If you're selling products to women, you want to also know if the TikTok influencer has majority female followers based in your target geography, let's say United States, and an audience that is age above a certain bracket. Now, being able to use data to double down or narrow down on the shortlisted of influencers is very important. But even beyond that, if you've, let's say, reached out to 100 influencers, how many of them have replied to your email, have accepted your proposal, have submitted content? How many content pieces were generated? What is the kind of engagement you are getting on these content pieces? Um, and finally, in terms of measurement, what is the sales? What is the reach you're getting? What is the conversion like? So there is data and attribution in the entire end-to-end influencer management process, which goes beyond just discovery. A lot of marketers, when we talk to them about data-driven influencer marketing, they think it's just about discovery and identifying influencers, but it's not. It's just actually much more than throughout the journey of influencers. And where we come in at Affable is we do provide these data points through the entire funnel of influencer marketing, from identifying the influencers using demographics and engagement data and fake follower detection technology, and then um, tracking how many conversations you've had, how many influencers have replied, so the funnel of your influencer outreach, and then finally the measurement, sales that the influencers have driven for you, the reach, impression, media value that you're getting, all of that combined and packaged into a data-driven platform is what we provide.
I mean, that's great because, as I said in the intro, um, customer acquisition costs are not getting cheaper. They're getting higher and higher through paid ads or any other way. The market is so competitive. There's recession, many other things going on in the world nowadays. So, companies need to build a brand, and many D2C companies forget about that because we have, as marketers and brand, we have had things easy or easier than now for years. And now after the iOS 14 update, which is the technical cause for this to happen, plus, the recession and many other things you mentioned earlier, those are actually the perfect storm, the perfect combination for everything to, make you go and build a brand. Actually, in a report, I mentioned this in some of the interviews, but in the report that the coach at eCommerce Fuel put together earlier this year in July, they actually said the key differentiator between the top performing D2C brands versus the comparison group is actually the brand factor. Building a
Right.
brand. It's a huge differentiation, not the ROAS, not the conversion rate, the brand factor. And part of building a brand, sure, you can build a community, you can build many things, but
Right.
getting, let's say honest and real people, which are in this case the influencers, which are not brand ambassadors, and we can discuss about that next. It's actually huge because it's not you bragging about how cool of a product you have. It's somebody else that you trust as a follower of that influencers that, we all know how influencer marketing works right now. We all follow influencers. So that's part of building a brand. And that's actually an accelerator of what many brands should be working on nowadays. It's building a brand. So
Right.
that's
I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think a lot of brands do not realize how important these influencers are from the content creation perspective. Now, one mistake brands always do is treat them as influencers who can just distribute content. But a big power of these influencers is that they are influential because of the kind of content they create. And as a brand who wants to focus on brand building, you could leverage this content on your email ads, on your Google ads, on your Facebook ads. You can push ads against the influencer content using whitelisting and reach more people. And you also save a lot of money on content production, which is a key part of this brand building exercise that we're just talking about, right? So uh, working with influencers is just beyond reach. It is also about getting that amazing piece of content and then having a channel to distribute it. So that's where we are big proponents of paying influencers for collaborations, because influencers are not just saying publishing a billboard ad. They're actually going to go out, create content, take a video, have all of that set up, keep trying again and again till they get that perfect piece of content that will resonate with their followers.
That's awesome. So what's the main difference in a nutshell between influencers and brand ambassadors?
Um, there is a difference, but there's also some overlap, I would say, right?
Okay.
Not every influencer is a brand ambassador, and not every brand ambassador is an influencer. So
Okay.
let's take it down, right? The first part, not every influencer is a brand ambassador, because a lot of times you are doing one-off campaigns. There's Black Friday, there's Mother's Day. You want to send out product. You say, "Hey, influencers, we're going to shortlist you." It's a one-off thing. You talk about us. There's a transaction. The influencer in this case is not vested in the brand. They're not going to keep talking about the brand over a long time. They are probably not even users or fans of the brand themselves. A brand ambassador on the other side is someone who's vested in the growth of the brand in some way. There is a longer term relationship, and they're fans, they're users of the brand. Now, I also mentioned that not every brand ambassador is an influencer, because you could pretty much have your employees as your brand ambassadors. You could have your customers as your brand ambassadors, who may not have 100,000 followers on Instagram, but they are going to go out and talk about your brand in positive way every chance that they get.
Yeah. And
So just to wrap it up, but then there's also an intersection. Sometimes you will have influencers that are brand ambassadors, and as a brand manager, that's your sweet spot. Because if there is an influencer who's big enough and who loves your brand, and if you can get them engaged in a longer term relationship, maybe go out, take them for dinner, cultivate that partnership with them, then in the long term as a brand, you benefit a lot if you find that intersection of a influencer plus brand ambassador.
yeah, I think many of your most loyal customers could be brand ambassadors. If you have a D2C brand, we have discussed this at length with some of I think really early this year, um, about, how they even gave them like a name to those group of people, their VIP customers, and they were like product testers at the same time.
Right,
So the early release of their products were to them, and then they gave them feedback. They try it on, and then they say, okay, this is not good, this is good, I love this, I hate this. And then they iterated, and then they released the final version based on the feedback. So that generates a cycle that is actually really valuable for the brand and the ambassadors, because these VIP customers feel actually like VIP customers. Because let's be
right,
real, we as brands want to keep them engaged, but they buy something from you once, and until they don't need it again, unless you do something about it, they won't engage with you. So if
right,
you keep them and say, hey, Brian or whoever, I I consider you a VIP customer because of X, Y, and Z, and I would love to give you like early access to this product, so you can give us feedback to iterate, and then give them a big shout out after we release the final product, blah blah blah. They will be the first people promoting the product with their friends and colleagues, right? So it's a
right.
cycle that you got validators, like product validators, you got loyal customers in return, and you have referrals. And influencer marketing can be just that. It's not about, hey, let's create content, let's write a blog post with the team we don't have, or let's hire someone else to. It's like more headcount, or it's like, no, why don't we leverage somebody else's audience with their authority and knowledge on the subject matter and allow them to create the content, right?
Right, right. Totally right. As I said, like there's a lot of value in getting these content creators because of their expertise in the space. A lot of times what happens is, let's say, for example, you are a brand that is selling in such a niche, I don't know, camping gears, right? It's such a strong category that you want to find content creators who have built their audiences and have created content in the last 5 years, all based on outdoor camping, hiking, and they've been talking about other brands in that space, etc. So now once you partner with someone in that space, you by association, you also become prominent as a brand because an influencer who's kind of like a big deal in that space is talking about you. So you get that validation by association. You reach a very specific audience, and there is a potential that you can get this person as an ambassador for you. So identifying influencers based on their historical work that they've done rather than just vanity metrics like followers and likes and comments, etc. There's so much more value in it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you next, actually, what are the KPIs that a brand should measure? And probably it's a chewing one question. The other part is like, what's the minimum period that they should do it for? It's like, I know how many campaigns, as I asked you earlier, but should they do it for 90 days? Should they do it? I mean, of course, again, it depends, but they need to try it for, a time that will make sense, right?
Right. Yeah, commitments are typically very subjective to the influencer partnerships. Also, the frequency, depends on your budget. Do you want the influencer to talk about your brand just once or once every week for the next like 6 weeks, or like 10 posts across distributed across a year? How it is, it's all kind of customized based on the negotiations that the brand has with the influencer. In many times there is also exclusivity associated where, hey, if I'm going to talk about, let's say, an eyelash brand, then uh, just don't talk about another eyelash brand in the next 2 months. And then the influencer might charge you for it because there's an opportunity cost. Like influencer may lose other brand collaborations, and as a brand, it's up to you to see if you actually care about it so much or not. Right? So I think a lot of it is very subjective to each influencer negotiation.
Yeah, and I have heard something, and please let me know your thoughts. And it's that it's not, let's say, exactly right to tell the influencer what to do with or what kind of content, not what kind of content, but to tell them exactly what to create with your products. Do you
Right.
agree?
Oh, for 100%. I think I mentioned briefly before about creative freedom. It is extremely important for the brand to give that creative freedom to the influencers because if you realize one thing, it is influencers are influencers because they know the kind of content that resonates with their followers. And for every influencer, that kind of content is going to be different. For some influencers, let's say outdoorsy with the product in the hand while running is the kind of content that works. For some other influencers, staying at home, tucked in bed with the product in the hand, that works. Maybe for some other influencer, just like holding a product in the hand in front of the face and taking a selfie works, right? I don't know. Different influencers have that resonance with their followers. So as a brand, when you come in, you want to give the leverage to the influencers and say, hey, we give you freedom. You create the kind of content you want. We trust you that you're going to do a good job at it. So make us proud. Versus, hey, here are the 10 things that you need to do, right? Like a list of items, and then that relationship may not necessarily work well in the long term. Of course, as a brand, you want to protect your brand equity. So you can tell them things that they should not do. And that's totally fair. You can say, hey, don't include these things, don't talk about certain topics, which doesn't go well with our brand. But that's it. Remaining, take a call, use your creativity. I think those kind of relationships are a good balance between the brand and influencers.
Awesome. Great. So I have one final question for you. For those listening or watching, we have just, or let's say a month ago, we released a blog post and we published that on LinkedIn and through email about the top books mentioned in 2022 by the guests here on the podcast. So I'll ask you next. If you don't have any, that's fine. Don't worry. But do you have any books that you loved? It could be business related or not business related. So do you have any to mention that we will include in the show notes later?
Yeah, sure thing. I love this book. It's called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It's the book about the history of how Nike as a brand was developed by the founders and the challenges they faced over building the brand. There is a great example of how they got into influencer marketing as a just like talking on the topic right now, where they went in the basketball influencers, the basketball players, and the NBA signed them up for like long-term deals. They're paying like $3 million, $4 million at that point, which was crazy. But look now, they are all over the place. There were some of the best deals they were able to crack. They were early in the game of like celebrity endorsements or influencer marketing. But just the hustle, the grit. Every time there was a challenge, the founder came back. They were out of money, they came back. They were out of suppliers, they came back. Somehow the guy kept coming back, and that's a great book on just like grit and hustle that you see, with some good insights on how they were super early to identify important creators to work with.
Thank you. I will definitely check it out and I will add it to the 2023 list. And I mean, if you guys are listening or watching again, you can go to fitgrowthmachine.com. You can find this episode and you will go to, if you scroll down, you will find the show notes with all the resources mentioned, including this book, right? So everything will be there. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, remember again to go to fitgrowthmachine.com and find the full notes there. I always ask that question because I want to read something different from what I always
Right.
read, right? So I want to find something new, something exciting to read that I haven't heard of. So this one is good. I didn't know the book, by the way, so thank you for suggesting it. Please, to wrap up, why don't you share with the audience where they can find you and, of course, find out more about Affable?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's search for Nisarg, Nisarg, and Affable, and you'll find me there. You can also reach out to me on Twitter. Again, find me with my name, and I'll be happy to respond, happy to give you more information about Affable AI and share more or a one-on-one discussion if you want to learn more about it.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Brian, for having me.